I'm back. I am back. And I am back to talk about the legend of the Hebrews. They say Jews, but it's the legend of the Hebrews. And I will go over it again that the word Hebrew, it means the children of Eber. Because if I take off the H on the front and I take off the W on the end, the word that I get in the middle is Eber, okay? And Eber was the son of Shem. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit because I don't want to get drowned out as I listen to this beautiful, 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 beautiful music in the background. If you look at my background, what you see is the most wonderful view in Saudi Arabia. And it is in the vicinity, at the vicinity of Jebel El Lawz, the mountain of Moshe. And what you see behind me is perhaps one of the places that Moshe stood when he went to talk to our ancestors as they stood around Mount Sinai. And they were there at Mount Sinai. The place that they had gotten to when they were running from Pharaoh's army. And the Most High, whether you like it or not, he opened up the Red Sea. And they crossed over at the, what is that? The beach of Nuwaba or Nuwabe. I better go and look at that. But anyway, they crossed over and the evidence and the wheels of the chariots have been found at the bottom of the Red Sea. Now this area in location is vast and was large enough to contain all of our people there as they waited to be presented the Torah. And some people may say, oh, that's that place is not glorious, that place is not beautiful, but let me tell you about the Most High. He doesn't use all the grand places or whatever to do his work, or he doesn't pick the so-called person among you that seems to be so great with so many certificates behind their name. But the Father, he picked the lowly shepherds. And he picked the humble. And he picked this humble mountain area for his people. I want you to know that Mount Sinai, the Mount Sinai that our ancestors went to, is in Arabia. Arabia. And Arabia, again, is a land that that Abraham gave to his children Ishmael. And Ishmael's descendants lived in Arabia, and also Keturah, which was his third wife, he had 6 sons by. She also lived in Arabia. And some folks call this the land of Jethro, okay? And I believe Jethro may have been one of the sons or the descendants of Keturah. Anyway, the Bedouins, nomad people, live in this particular area, and they're around this particular area. And they do try to make sure to protect this particular area. But you have to ask the question, why is it that the so-called Jews, the Caucasoids, the ones that are over there calling themselves Hebrews, and they are not? Because the original Hebrews were dark-skinned people. They wasn't Europeans. They was not Germans. They were not Ashkenazis. This is true. And I guarantee you, if you come to Mount Sinai in Arabia and go to the place of the graves of those that died there, those that were destroyed there, their bones and their carcasses, their graveyard is still over there. And if you examine the bones and the different things that are left in this particular area, you will find that the DNA leads to a Negroid race of Black people. Okay? So, seeing that I'm here, I don't know how soon it will be, but we're going to be taking the Exodus. We don't know exactly when it'll be, but there'll be a second Exodus. And I think about my loving Jay Fitzgerald, that they have a rumor about, that they have arrested him. But I want to let you people know that the Most High works in mysterious ways. And even in ancient time, many of his workers or those that looked to him, they were in prison and they also got out as well. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's a lot of prisoners in there that may need to talk to Jay. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what, we don't know what purpose, but let me tell you, in fact, the life, and may it be 2 million guns. Anyway, let me continue on, because as we are working, the Father is working. Only thing about it, our enemies don't know quite how he is working. But anyway, as they work, the Father is working, and so are we. Now, let me try to figure out what section it is that I would like to start in. Okay. And I'm going to go back a little later, but right now I just wanted to go over the Exodus, since we're talking about the Exodus. And since our spirits, oh my goodness, are energizing us, making us think on our Exodus and thinking on our departure up out of here. A lot of people don't know where we're going. But based on many of our readings, I don't know when, the Most High is going to bring us back into the land. Now, how miraculously he does that, I'm not quite sure. But his word goes out and it does not return unto him void. All of his promises, he keeps them. And I will remind you one more time. The Most High does not hear your prayers, your groans, or your moanings, not until your chastisement is near to come to an end. So, in days to come, whether they want or not, we're getting up out of all the areas and the places and the lands that we have been driven to, that we have been put on ships, and we're getting up out of there. Yes, indeed. Guaranteed. Now, the Exodus, it says, Pharaoh and the Egyptians let their dead lie unburied while they hasten to help the Israelites load their possessions on wagons to get them out of the land with as little delay as possible. Our Creator has scared the living, should I say, mess out of them. Mess with his children. And when the time comes for him to rise up, you'll be sorry. So anyway, they were scared and they was nervous and they was like, we got to get these Israelites out of here, out of here. Because the Most High, the last thing he struck, he slayed the firstborn in Egypt. He slayed the firstborn of beasts. Yes, he did. So they was ready to get us out of there. It said, and when they left, they took with them, besides their own cattle, sheep, and the oxen that Pharaoh had ordered his nobles to give them as presents. The king also forced his magnates to beg pardon of the Israelites for all they had suffered, knowing, as he did, that God forgives an injury done by man to his fellow only after the wrongdoer has recovered the goodwill of his victim by confessing and regretting his fault. Now depart, said Pharaoh to the Israelites. I want nothing from you, but that you should pray to the Most High for me, that I may be saved from death. He was willing at that time to give presents, to give gifts, to give anything that he could, so that the Most High would not touch them in any way remotely in his wrath as he did. The hatred of the Egyptians toward the Israelites changed now into its opposite. See, you don't understand hate people. You don't really understand what hatred looks like. You don't understand what hatred is capable of. You don't understand what hatred is. Hatred is cruel. Hatred has no feeling. Hatred has no heart. And hatred can do any horrendous thing and feel no regret at all. You don't understand hatred. That's why you trust your enemies, because you do not know the full extent of how deep hatred goes. The hatred of the Egyptians toward the Israelites changed now into its opposite. They conceived affection and friendship for them and fairly forced raiments upon them and jewels of silver and jewels of gold to take along with them on their journey, although the children of Israel had not yet returned the articles they had borrowed from the neighbors at an earlier time. This action is in part to be explained by the vanity of Pharaoh and his people. They desired to pretend before the world that they were vastly rich, as everybody would conclude when his wealth of their mere slaves were displayed to observers. Indeed, the Israelites bore so much away from Egypt that one of them alone might have defrayed the expense of building and furnishing the tabernacle. And as it was in those days in Egypt, so shall it be when our exodus shall come again, when we come up out of the north country. It says, and on their way, and on our ancestors' way, leaving the land, only the private wealth of the Egyptians was in their
Santa might deliver the
hands.
gifts, but Jet's Pizza delivers the goods.
But when they arrived at the Red Sea, they came into possession of the public treasury. Do you hear that? We're talking
Sorry,
about
big guy. We
the
just do it
public
better.
treasury.
Jet's
We came
better
into
because
the
it has to be.
hands of the public treasury. The public treasury. I know I said that quite a bit of times, but I was trying to get my music together. Excuse me. Well, on our way leaving the land, or our ancestors' way leaving the land, only the private wealth of the Egyptian was in their hands. But when they arrived at the Red Sea, they came into possession of a public treasury. 2, for a Pharaoh, like all kings, carried the monies of the state with him on his campaigns in order to be prepared to hire a relay of mercenaries in case of defeat. Now, great as the other treasures was, the booty captured at the sea far exceeded it. But if the Israelites loaded themselves down with goods and jewels and money, it was not to gratify love of riches, or as any ussurer might say, because they coveted their neighbor's possessions. In the first place, they could look upon their plunder as wages. Check this out. As wages due to them from those they had long served. And secondly, they were entitled to retaliate on those at whose hands they had suffered wrong. Now, check that out. Now, all of our enemies and all the nations have gotten rich off of us, but they haven't paid up. They haven't paid us our wages, and they haven't paid us our dues for all the labor that we have been laboring for them to become rich. They haven't paid their dues. For free labor and for cheap wages that they gave us. But it's going to be the same old thing like when we left out of Egypt, because this here says that in the first place, let's go back over this again. It said, but if the Israelites loaded themselves down with goods and jewelry and money, it was not to gratify love of riches, or as any ussurer might say, because they coveted their neighbor's possessions. In the first place, they could look upon their plunder as wages due them from those they had long served in slavery. And secondly, they were entitled to retaliate on those at whose hands they had suffered wrong. Even then, they were requiting them with an affection far slighter than any one of all they had endured themselves. The plagues did not stay the cruelty of the Egyptians, oppressors toward the Hebrews. It continued unabated until the very end of their sojourn in the land. On the day of the Exodus, Rachel, the daughter of Shuthelah, gave birth to a child while she and her husband together were treading the clay for bricks. The babe dropped from her womb into the clay and sank out of sight. Gabriel appeared, molded a brick out of the clay containing the child, and carried it to the highest of the heavens, where he made it a footstool before the divine throne. In that night, it was that the Most High looked upon the suffering of Israel and smote the firstborn of the Egyptians. And it is one of the 4 nights that the Most High Yahweh has inscribed in the book of memorial. The first of the four is that in which the Most High Yahweh appeared to create the world. All was waste and void, and darkness brooded over the abyss until the Most High came and spread light around about it by his word. Now the second night is that in which the Most High appeared unto Abraham at the covenant of the pieces. In the third night, he appeared in Egypt, slaying the firstborn of the Egyptians with his right hand, and protecting the firstborn of the Israelites with his left. The fourth night recorded will be that in which the end of the redemption will be accomplished, when the iron yoke of the wicked kingdom of Rome will be broken and the evildoers will be destroyed. Then will Moshe come from the desert and the Messiah from Rome, each at the head of his flock. And the word of Yahweh will mediate between them, causing both to walk with one accord in the same direction. And Israel's redemption in future days will happen on the 15th of Nisan, the night of Israel's redemption from Egypt. For thus did Moshe say, in the night Yahweh protected Israel against the angels of destruction, and in the night he will also redeem the generation of the future. We are the generation of the future that our forefathers talked about in the ancient texts. I say again, as my daughter's father said, sit down and look and see what Yah will do. Though the actual deliverance from Egypt took place in that night, the Hebrews did not leave the land until the following day in the morning. Now, during the same night, Yahweh requited the Egyptians for their evil deeds in the sight of all the people, the night being as bright as day at the time of the summer solstice. Not one could escape the general chastisement. For by divine dispensation, none was absent from home at the time, so that none could fail to see the chastisement. The Malachim in heaven learned what was happening on earth. When they were about to begin their songs of praise to Yahweh, he silenced them with the words, "My children on earth are singing now." And the celestial host had to stop and listen to the songs of Yisrael, the Hebrews, the black Hebrews. Great as the joy of the Hebrews was at their deliverance from the Egyptian bondage, it was exceeded by that of Pharaoh's people at seeing their slaves depart. For with them went the dread of death that had obsessed them. They were like the portly gentleman riding an ass. The rider feels uncomfortable and longs for the moment of alighting, but his longing cannot compare in intensity with that of the ass groaning under the corpulent burden, and when their journey's end is reached. The ass rejoices more than his master, so the Egyptians were happier to be rid of the Hebrews than though these were to be free. In general, The Israelites were not in a joyous mood. The strength of man is readily exhausted mentally and physically by the strain of a sudden change from slavery to freedom. They did not recover vigor and force until they heard the angels' host sing songs of praise and joy over the redemption of Yisrael and the redemption of the Shekinah. For so long as the chosen people is in exile, I'm going to repeat that. It says, for so long as the chosen people is in exile, the Shekinah who dwells among Israel is also, as it were, in exile. At the same time, Yahweh caused the earth to exhale and send aloft a healing fragrance, which cured them of all their diseases. Check that out. Of all their diseases, and in our case, honey, these people have pumped us up with some of everything, and we have so many different diseases and sicknesses and all these different things that were drummed up by our enemies. It says the exodus of the Israelites began at Ramses. And although the distance from there to the city of Mazrim, where Moses abode, was a 40 days journey, yet they heard the voice of their leader urging them to leave the land. They covered the distance from Ramses to Succoth, a 3 days march, in an instant. In Succoth, Yahweh enveloped them in 7 clouds of glory, 4 hovering in front, behind, and at the 2 sides of them. 1 suspended above them to keep off rain, hail, and the rays of the sun, and 1 under them to protect them against thorns and snakes. The 7th cloud preceded them and prepared the way for them, exalting the valleys and making low every mountain and hill. Thus they wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. In all that time, no artificial lighting was needed. A beam from the celestial cloud followed them into the darkness of chambers. And if one of the people had to go outside of the camp, even thither, he was accompanied by a fold of the cloud covering and protecting him. Only that a difference might be made between day and night, a pillar of fire took the place of the cloud in the evening. Never for an instant were the people without the one or the other to guide them. The pillar of fire gloomed in front of them before the pillar of cloud retired. And in the morning, the cloud was there before the fire vanished. The clouds of glory and the pillar of fire were sent for the protection of Yisrael, the Hebrews alone. For none beside, not for the heathen and not for the mixed multitudes that went up with them. These had to walk outside of the cloud enclosure. The Kaveh Clade consisted of 600,000 heads of families of foot, each accompanied by 5 children on horseback, and to these must be added the mixed multitude, exceeding the Hebrews vastly in number. So profound was Yisrael's trust in the Most High that they followed Moshe unmurmuringly, if in case I didn't really pronounce that correctly, unmurmuringly into the wilderness without supplying themselves with the provisions. The only edibles they took were the remains of the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs, and these not to satisfy their hunger, but because they were unwilling to separate themselves from what they had prepared lovingly at the command of the Most High. These possessions were so dear to them that they would not entrust them to the beast of burden. They carried them on their own shoulders. Our exile is coming to an end soon. Even though soon could be a while. But anyway, I'm going to stop right there for a moment. And I'm kind of feeling up to kind of reading some things before they got to the actual Exodus, when the people wanted them to hurry up and like, y'all need to hurry up and get on up out of here. All these plagues and everything done scared the mess out of us. And y'all need to hurry up and go. Y'all just need to, y'all got to go. Y'all got to go. Please go. Let them hurry up and go and be out of here. And be out of here. So, let me see. I think I want to go backwards a little bit. It seems like I want to go backwards and touch on, I might have read this anyway, but I just want to add it in. I'm going backwards right now. From the affliction of the first of the plagues until the passing of the last, after which the Egyptians yielded all that Moshe and Aaron demanded. There elapsed a whole year, for 12 months is the term set by the Most High for the expiration of sins. The deluge lasted 1 year. Job suffered 1 year. Sinners must endure hell torture for 1 year, and the judgment upon Gog, Rome, at the end of time will be executed for the length of 1 year. Moshe announced the first plague to Pharaoh one morning when the king was walking by the river's brink. This morning walk enabled him to practice a deception. He called himself a god and pretended that he felt no human needs. To keep up the illusion, he would repair to the edge of the river every morning and ease nature there while alone and unobserved. At such a time it was that Moshe appeared before him and called out to him, "Is there a God that hath human needs?" "Verily, I am no God," replied Pharaoh. "I only pretend to be one before the Egyptians, who are such idiots. One should consider them asses rather than human beings." Then Moshe made known to him that the Most High would turn the waters into blood if he refused to let Israel go. In the warning, we can discern the difference between God and man. When a mortal harbors the intention to do an injury to an enemy, he lies in wait for the moment when he can strike an unexpected blow. But the Most High is outspoken. He warned Pharaoh and the Egyptians in public whenever a plague was about to descend, and each warning was repeated by Moses for a period of 3 weeks, although the plague itself endured but a single week. As Pharaoh would not lay the warning to heart, the plagues announced by Moses was let loose upon him and his people. The waters were turned into blood. It is a well-known proverb: beat the idol and the priests are in terror. The Most High smote the river Nile, which the Egyptians worshiped as their god, in order to testify to Pharaoh and his people and force them to do the divine will. To produce the plague, Aaron took his rod and he stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt. And Moshe had no part in performing the miracle, for the Most High had said to him, "The water that watched over thy safety when thou wast exposed in the Nile shall not suffer harm through thee." Then Aaron had scarcely executed the divine bidding when all the waters of Egypt became blood, even such as was kept in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. The very spittle of an Egyptian turned into blood. No sooner had he ejected it, and blood dripped also from the idols of the Egyptians. And I'm going to just stop here for a moment because power is trying to go down in my. Unfortunately, my people, it seems as though I must stop because I forgot my power cord. But anyway, I'll be back to tell this wonderful story and also to talk about these prophecies. Remember, as I said, keep the faith, be strong. Think on our Exodus and all the little things that are going on. So don't let it bother you. Let your faith be in the Most High and not in men. Remember, the Most High works in mysterious ways. We don't always understand what He's going to do. But I'm going to say to you right now, sit down, look, and see what He will do. Remember, He holds all life in His hand. Even if your life is taken, guess what? Your soul and your spirit lives on. It lives on. Our enemies only appears that they're got people dropping like flies, killing folk and all this kind of carrying on. They ain't doing nothing. They're not doing nothing. They think they're doing something. But the punishment that awaits them, it's going to be a terrible thing to fall in the hands of a wrathful, angry creator who pays measure for measure. So when you're drumming up all your evil concoctions and plans and schemes against His people, the apple of His eye, you make sure you consider the payback that you won't receive, measure for measure. Well, till next time, Dana Tate, I'll see you again with the next reading of the Legend of the Hebrews and all the other books. So many books. Jubilees, the books of Yahshua, Legend of the Jews, and so many more I can name. Maybe when I get a chance, I'll name them all. I done read them all. I read so many. There's so many, and I have enjoyed them, and I have loved them. And you will too.